Thanks for joining us on Power Lunch. This is Bloomberg Quint. I'm Harsha Subramaniam. The headlines at this hour. Indian shares continue to drop amid weak global cues on worries of policy uncertainty in the United States. The Bank Nifty is the worst sectoral performer after the RBI bars lenders from issuing new letters of undertaking for imports. The government amends long-term capital gains tax, granting relief to unlisted shares. That's a Bloomberg exclusive. Indian Oil redeveloped its own refining technology, helping it save up to $1.5 billion. ICICI Securities cuts its own valuation just a week before the IPO opens for subscription. Also on the show, we discuss the impact of RBI's ban on letters of undertaking or letters of comfort with former governor of the RBI, or Deputy Governor of the RBI, H.R. Khan. Also joining us will R.K. Bakshi, former ED of Bank of Baroda. But that's in a moment from now. Let's talk about how the markets have been faring. It's not looking good on the screen at all. There are global factors once again at play. Neeraj is here with a closer look at what's going on, particularly on bank stocks that have been taking it on the chin. Yeah, that's it. Actually, it's all about banks, and it just somehow feels, Harsha, I don't know, I'm sure you're getting that sense as well, that template of we getting sold out every single time we have a day of a major rally or 2 days of a decent rally is just firmly in place. And the reasons come out, whatever the reasons may have been, but we typically tend to see that. We started seeing a bit of that in large caps yesterday, but mid caps had a splendid rally. Today, all of them have come off quite rapidly, and a 0.5% fall doesn't seem to be too much. But look at banks, look at what's happened to select broader end of the spectrum stocks, and that tells you the story. PSU banks all across the board, we have cuts, and it's not that the VIX has really shot up dramatically. VIX is up about 0.6, 0.7%, but PSU banks by and large have come off. Okay, 1% actually. India VIX has hardly gone up. 0.9% and not really 0.6%, but PSU banks have come off. On the large cap end of the market as well, a lot of gainers of yesterday have completely come off. So you see BP, HP, IOC, big movers yesterday, down to about 2.5%, 3% apiece. Clearly shows that there is some bit of trading activity happening, and on any rise of 4, 5, 6, 7%, traders are booking profits. That certainly seems to be the template. Yesterday, we had a CEO of Sundaram Mutual AMC making a point, which we will verify with some of the other mutual fund managers as well. But they are saying that in a lot of dividend schemes, because post-April there will be taxation that will be levied, right now on all the dividend schemes, wherever mutual funds are making profits, they are selling off select names in order to be able to give dividend to their investors in all of those dividend schemes. Those are not very large because a lot of people started plowing money into growth schemes. Correct. But whatever little may have been, the DI support is, in a manner of speaking, absent. Now, it may have been restricted to one fund house, but I think that CEO made a point that he believes it's happening across the industry. We'll verify it with a few people, but that would seem to suggest that for the next few days, on some rallies or some rises, domestic investors, if that behavior is indeed true, might be sellers, and therefore we have this behavior. Interesting that. Neeraj, thank you so much indeed. That's what's happening in the markets. News from Delhi, the finance bill has been passed in Parliament. The government has amended the long-term capital gains tax clause, granting tax relief to unlisted shares. Bloomberg was the first one to report on this earlier today. Vrishti Beniwal from Bloomberg News joins us from our studios in Delhi. Vrishti, what do we know?
So, Harsha, we have some good news for investors today. The government presented finance bill in Parliament, and amendments to finance bill were cleared in Parliament. It shows that on unlisted shares, capital gain tax relief has been given to investors. We don't have too many details at this stage because there was a lot of chaos in Parliament and the bill was passed without much discussion. We are still going through the fine print, but at this moment what appears is there is a relief on unlisted shares as far as capital gains tax is concerned. Remember, when this tax was introduced on 1st February in the budget, there was a lot of uneasiness in the market on this new tax, and markets had fallen after that. Now, with government giving some relief, there should be some hope for investors. And so we are going through the details of the finance bill. As and when we get more, we will come back to you on that. One more thing which is there, which we understand from the amendments, is indexation benefit has been provided. So that is a positive for investors.
Okay. Vishu, we'll let you go and come back with more details on this one. But let's move on to the other big story. In a bid to crack down on fraudulent transactions, the Reserve Bank of India has banned banks from issuing letters of undertaking or letters of comfort, as they call, for imports into India, that too with immediate effect. Vishwanath is here to explain the rationale behind this move and, more importantly, the implications. Vishwanath.
Right, Harsha. So LOCs and LOUs, these were typically non-fund based certificates or papers which were issued largely by Indian banks for Indian importers to the foreign branches of other Indian banks. So essentially it was a very India-centric phenomenon, because globally what happens is banks issue only LCs, or letters of credit, and bank guarantees wherever trade credit is involved. So now what the RBI has done is that they've completely removed the LOCs and LOUs from the picture. They've said that banks will have to follow what globally other banks do, issue only LCs and bank guarantees. So that's essentially the announcement that came in last night. This is obviously following the Nirav Modi scandal that happened with Punjab National Bank. So that's very evident now.
Okay, let's welcome in H.R. Khan, former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Mr. Khan, thank you so much indeed for joining us. You were among the first who expressed your reservations about what's likely to happen to LCs, or rather letters of comfort and letters of undertaking, when the PNB scam first broke out. What is your reading of this? Is the Reserve Bank of India guilty of throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
No, they must have thought through the whole thing, and the way that instrument has been abused in this particular case, more out of operation risk failure, but then the instrument has got a bad name, and in the past also there have been reports people using it for arbitrage games. So that, and overseas centers and certain centers also had their views that
Okay, we seem to have lost that line with Mr. Khan. We'll come back to him in just a bit. But Vishwanath, just the sort of the differentiation, right? How does this thing work? Why has this been a more popular tool so far?
I mean, I don't know about popular, because in our conversations with the exporters-importer community, as well as some of the bankers, these were largely used by smaller companies and largely in the gold import segment. So, you know, while that may as be, the difference between an LOU and LC here is that the buyer comes into the picture whenever an LOU is involved. So the buyer or the importer who is based out of India, essentially the person who negotiates with this foreign bank, negotiates with the domestic bank, gets an LOU done, and then gets his product from whoever is exporting it from abroad. In the LC infrastructure, what typically happens is banks deal with each other. The buyer's bank and the seller's bank only talk to each other. The money is settled between the two of them, and then the importer gets whatever delivery of the products he's due to receive. So that is a difference, and that, you know, as the structure will tell you, has fewer chances of it being misused, or, you know, some kind of fraudulent transactions taking place through that infrastructure,
as opposed to an
LOU or
we
LOC.
got Mr. Khan back on the line. Sorry, Mr. Khan, we lost you. Please go ahead and complete your point. You were talking about the ramifications of this ban.
No, what I was telling this, since there were also reports about people playing arbitrage game using this, but also the positive side was that it was providing cheaper funds to Indian exporters, importers, because many exporters are also importers, and they were getting dollar funding. But then if you misuse certain instrument, then possibly you have to face the consequence. But I wish we could have planned a transition a little better, because in the immediate context, setting the LC limit, getting the sellers to agree for a long-term LC, this may cause a problem. So possibly a transition path could have helped. But then, given the enormity of the situation, probably RBI would have thought that let us go for a
Mr. Khan, this is Vishwanath. Just a day before this announcement came in, the RBI also said that LCs can only be maximum for a year. So do you think that possibly setting that 1 year deadline would make sense here, because now that it becomes the primary tool?
Operating cycle, so it should for arbitrage game. So that must be the thinking behind that.
Sure, sir.
Okay, I have also Mr. R.K. Bakshi joining us from the former Executive Director of Bank of Baroda. Mr. Bakshi, thank you so much for joining in as well. What have you made of this move by the Reserve Bank of India to go ahead and ban it entirely? that is LOUs and letters of comfort. What are the options before an importer today, particularly the small importer?
See, I don't know how many very small importers were actually using LOUs. Very small importers importing normal goods for their non-capital goods, maybe doing it more through letters of credit, which may be either payable on demand or payable after 90 or 180 days. Who play of their customers and are ready to issue LOU. LC is also a similar document which they give. If they are ready to take a credit risk on the customer for 90 or 180 days, they can give LC also. In LC is a more monitorable document. LOU has its own distinct benefits, but LC, from risk management perspective, is a more monitorable document because you get the documents of title to goods in that and invoice, which must be submitted by the exporter to the exporter's bank and then flow to the importer's bank through the normal channel. So there's more control on the transaction.
Sorry to interrupt. So was the ban the only alternative before the Reserve Bank, sir? Particularly that this could cause near-term disruption for importers. Was there any other easier way out? Was there probably greater regulation of it? Was that a likely option too?
I cannot step into the regulator's mind and in their space to comment on that. They might have more data points than I have access to, and they must have taken a decision in totality. Of course, the event that has gone before has been very shocking for the country. It has really brought such a mammoth loss to the industry and loss of confidence.
Okay.
That regulator's action was impending.
Okay.
Whether this or that is a question, but that the people will be starved of credit or options may not necessarily be the case because it is a working capital assessment of the borrower which is done.
Okay.
And then it may be met either by giving them a direct lending in rupees here or giving them letters of credit or giving them SBLC or giving them an LOU. So the LOUs, only the bank should now take care that they should facilitate smooth transition from LOU-based regime to LC-based regime.
Okay, let me go back to Mr. Khan on this, sir. Was this the best option on the table for the Reserve Bank of India? What do you think will be the near-term disruptions that's likely?
No, this has happened. This could possibly affect dollar flows, and since most of the importers, many of them are exporters, will now more rely on rupee funds, which cost is high. So it may, at margin, it may affect export competitiveness and cost of imports may go up. But then since it has happened, I think the banks and maybe through IBA, they should little proactively try to help the customer and set up lines for LCs, and that transition should be made as smooth as possible, because setting up a LC limit and making the borrowers, the suppliers agree is a challenge. So that needs to be faced quickly and squarely. So I think that's the best option at the current junction. As Mr. Bakshi rightly said, one of the major problems is that, and it has also been highlighted by Dr. Rajan recently, is in the non-fund based business, the standard of appraisal, standard of diligence, standard of underwriting has not been to the extent it is required under funded exposure. So I think there is a need to tighten this, the underwriting standards as well as monitoring part of it. I think that is also important. And the last point I would like to make before I have to catch a flight is that I think this entire amount which banks have been exposed to, that should be settled quickly and best possible manner, so that the confidence in banking system, particularly overseas financial centers, are restored as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. H.R. Khan, for joining us. Mr. Bakshi, my last question to you. You mentioned what this would mean for cost of credit for importers. It is inevitable now that they will have to opt for sort of higher cost options. What do you think are the implications out of this? Do you see sort of the overall imports reducing? Are banks turning importers away? What's the sense that you're getting?
No, I don't think banks will be turning importers away. A bank, as I said, a holistic working capital limit is assessed for the borrower and borrower is considered credit worthy, and then the limits are placed at his disposal. Then there will be sub-limits. There will be a sub-limit for LOU or LC or cash credit and all. So the credit risk is accepted by the bank. So now they have to shift from LOU to LC or rupee funding.
Okay.
That is one thing where the cost can go up. And LOU, the benefit to the customer was that he could be, his supplier's bank may be X, but X may not be ready to discount the bills at a competitive rate. So this importer could go shopping around and get the discounting done not from the supplier's bank, but from a new bank altogether at a very concessional rate. That will not be available. But having said that, still funding in dollars or funding in foreign currency at cheaper rates compared to rupee is possible if the banks open LCs for 180 days or 360 days and permit the customers to discount from the supplier's bank, which may be slightly costlier than LOU, but maybe much less costlier than the rupee credit.
Okay. We'll leave it there, sir. Thank you so much indeed for taking our call. That's Mr. Bakshi, former Executive Director at Bank of Baroda, talking about what this would mean for banks and for importers as well. We spoke to one of them, Gems and Jewelry Export Promotion Council. They say that this ban does not impact the jewelry industry, especially the larger players. Speaking to us earlier today, the Vice Chairman of the Gems and Jewelry Industry Body, Colin Shah, says the smaller, unorganized players may bear the brunt. Listen.
The diamond trade did not use LOUs. This was a very isolated case. These two companies, allegedly, they're under investigation, but the diamond trade did not use LOUs anyway. So, there's zero to no impact. If LOUs go away, actually, we've been talking to the banks and the government to come out with a progressive diamond policy, which mitigates the risk of the banks, but at the same time helps trade to get the finance it needs. So if you look at the SMEs anyways struggled to get finance, will struggle more now to get finance. Their collateral limits were already like more than 100% of the loans that they asked for. Their interest rates were higher because they were not able to comply with all the rating requirements. So the SMEs continue to struggle. The large players never used LOUs or letters of comfort. What the trade uses is we have packing credit, post-shipment credit, and you have your long-term loans.
Okay, that's the gems and jewelry industry saying that there is no direct impact on the large guys. But let's also talk about another development in the banking space. This is about the IBA asking for more leeway from the Reserve Bank of India on the strategic debt restructuring mechanism. Vishwanath, you've been tracking this too. What's the development?
Yeah, so this was bound to happen. What happened on the 12th of February was the Reserve Bank of India came out with a new set of guidelines for stressed asset guidelines on managing of these stressed assets. They withdrew all previous plans, including the SDR. Now, SDR, if you remember, when it first came out, was popular amongst bankers because it gave them an 18-month standstill on the asset classification. So if you invoke SDR in an account for 18 months, it continues as a standard account within which you have to sell the majority equity that you have acquired and sell it to a potential buyer. If you are not able to sell it within those 18-month period, then that account turns into an NPA. Yep. So that was essentially that standstill clause that was there within the SDR. As I said, it was very popular amongst bankers. It was invoked in a lot of cases. When the RBI put out its new set of guidelines, it said that anywhere where it has been invoked but not implemented, you have to withdraw the SDR and restructure that account under the new scheme. What the bankers are saying is that wherever allow us to finish that 18-month period, allow us to find a buyer under SDR for those cases wherever it has been invoked. Let us complete that entire process, because otherwise what is going to happen is that March quarter NPAs and the subsequent April-June quarter NPAs will be very, very high. This afternoon, there was Rajkiran Rai from Union Bank who was speaking to Bloomberg Quint, and he stated that they have approached the Reserve Bank of India. They're looking for some kind of benefit from the RBI, but they're yet to hear from it. That bank alone has about 2,600 crore worth of loans under SDR. So, you can imagine some of the larger guys like an SBI or a PNB, the size quantum of loans that will be there under SDR. So all of these accounts otherwise will come into the NPA number, and then that's obviously going to push that number up. So that whole thing about this is behind us, we'll sort of, the bankers are going behind the NPS.
It's front of you. It's staring at you in your face and likely to get bigger. Thank you, Vishwanath, for that. That's the story on the banking side. Let's talk about the oil and gas sector. We've got two interesting stories for you. Debjit Chakraborty from Delhi and Saket Sundaria from Bombay talking to us about two different stories. The biggest refiner, IOC, is betting on its own technology for about $1.5 billion worth of cost saving. IOC has developed a refining process that could give global giants a run for their money. Debjit is here with us. Will tell us what that technology is and why and how IOC stands to gain. Debjit.
As you rightly said, one of the biggest customers in the fastest growing oil market in the world has developed, is turning out to be a rival for the global giants in the space of oil refining technology processes. Indian Oil has been investing on R&D for the last few decades, and we interviewed the director for R&D at Indian Oil, and he said that the company has developed technologies, refining technologies, and can build 75% of a new refinery on its own. So that will free it up from the mercy of all the technology giants who used to supply technologies for producing, say, gasoline, diesel, LPG at whatever fees they used to charge. So Indian Oil is now able to build 75% of any refinery, and they're targeting to do that in the mega West Coast refinery coming up in Ratnagiri. If they're able to do that, they can save at least $1.5 billion on technology fees. Not just that, they're also setting up a plant in Panipat for developing catalyst. Remember, catalyst has a 2,000 crore annual market in India. We have 23 refineries in the country. So all this, the refining technologies, the catalyst, will be a big boost for Indian Oil as we continue to build more refineries in the country.
Debjit, thank you so much for that. There's another interesting development. Global giants are putting their money on natural gas in India. They're betting that stricter emission standards will make compressed natural gas the fuel of choice, particularly on highways. Saket is here to tell us why this is significant and whether LNG can actually overtake diesel if this were to work through.
Yeah, that's always a possibility, but not in the near term, definitely. The issue here is why LNG and can it replace diesel? Both things are possible. Once, because LNG is any day cheaper than diesel. Even at current cost, it's almost half of what a diesel would cost you. And second is the environmental cost. India has some of the most polluted cities in the world. So there's more push towards environment-friendly fuels. And LNG is obviously the front runner because it's we have the capacity, we can, and it can compete with gas or diesel on pricing. So all these big players, including your Petronet LNG, which is India's largest LNG importer, and Shell, which also has a terminal here, are now trying to set up all those retail outlets and the subsequent infrastructure that's needed to provide LNG to trucks. Because the most important and crucial part here is that you need a supply chain. Otherwise, you will have standard trucks and buses all over the places. So to start with, Petronet LNG is starting with 4 buses next month at 2 of its terminals, where it will ferry its employees in LNG fueled buses. We have not had LNG fueled buses before.
Explain this to me. This is gas.
This is gas. So, yeah. So what happens is this difference between LNG and CNG is LNG is far more cooled. The temperatures can be far below like 100 degrees centigrade and minus 100 degrees centigrade, and it needs to be under very high pressure. So you need a different kind of storage systems on board the trucks. CNG is still at a far higher pressure compared to LNG and a higher temperature. I mean, so it's easier to put that. So that is one challenge that has been now surmounted. Now we have technology. China is running around 200,000 buses, 2 lakhs buses and trucks on the road which run on LNG. So it's been a success in China, and it's something that probably can work for India as well.
Who's betting big? Who's investing in India in this?
So to start with, as I said, Petronet LNG is already starting on it. They expect to put in around 1,500 crores, 15 billion rupees in this, just to put up about 20 LNG refueling stations between west and south. There's a smaller company called H Energy which wants to invest around 1,000 crores in putting up again LNG refueling stations and other infrastructure that's needed between west and east and west and south, because these are the two areas where you have LNG terminals, so it's easier for them to do it. There are other companies like Shell and some AG&P and others who want to get into this business. Shell is starting very soon with truck loading terminals on its LNG terminal in Hazira on the west coast. So all these companies are now preparing the ground, and then obviously it will take some time to catch up. You need the trucks, you need to convince people to buy those trucks because the trucks are expensive. LNG is cheaper, but the life cycle cost will come out cheaper. So all those things will take time probably, but this is one thing that can definitely work for India.
Interesting. That's okay. Thank you so much for that interesting one. Let's talk about pharma now. Even as Indian pharma stocks go out of favor this year, there is steady buying in multinational stocks. So what's setting them apart? Darshan has done an analysis for us comparing the two. Why is the investor interest shifting to MNCs, Darshan?
Basically, there seems to be a lot of trouble as far as the US markets and overseas markets are concerned, and we'll tell you firstly. But if you point out, the gains that have been seen, because if you're looking at a YTD gain, companies like Sanofi is trading at fresh 52-week high, while companies like Lupin are trading at fresh 52-week low. So look at the gains that are there. So the Nifty Pharma Index is down almost close to 10%. Sanofi is up 10%, Pfizer is up 6%, Abbott's up 6%, and Novartis is down just 3%. And they've been outperforming the companies in the domestic space. Cipla also has a large Indian presence, that's why it's saved. But look at Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy, Cadila, Lupin, or Aurobindo. Some of them have double-digit losses in this year itself. Now, if you're looking at some of the important points, look at the valuation. Valuation for all of them have come down. Valuations are anywhere between 25 times to 35 times for the MNC, and look at the valuations of the Indian pharma. So even at a 12-time valuation, there seems to be money, and valuations are now becoming extremely cheap for Indian pharma companies, but yet money seems to be moving on the multinational side. Now, if you're looking at how the margins happened in the December quarter, the MNCs have managed to improve their margins significantly. From single-digit margins, they've managed to come up to margins. The Pfizer has margins of 26%, which is almost higher than all the Indian pharma companies put together. And look at Lupin and look at the other companies like Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy. Their margins at one point of time, Sun Pharma was doing a margin excess of 35%. Now it's at 22%. So margin-wise, they have improved. Even if you're looking at the EPS, look at the EPS of the MNC companies versus the Indian companies. Now, I'll break this up and to tell you on a like-to-like comparison what they've done EPS in the last quarter compared to the full year, and that will give you a better story. Now, last full year, Sanofi did an EPS of 142. They've done 33. Look at Abbott. They did a 54 EPS last quarter, while they did 130 last year. Look at some of the companies like GSK Pharma or Novartis. So it seems, looking at the last quarter numbers, they will be able to beat or come in higher EPS this year around if you analyze this number. So they've been doing well. But look at what's happened with the Indian company. Sun Pharma did an EPS of 29 last year. Last quarter they did just 2 rupees. Look at Lupin. They did 57 last time around. They've done just 5 this time around. So they can see the earn pressure that's coming in for the Indian pharma companies. So that's very, very evident as far as the Indian pharma companies are concerned. Now, what is working in favor of the MNC pharma company? First of all, the big problem of foreign regulatory issues are not there, because for them, the US FDA and all will look at, they're basically catering to the Indian market. So that's a big positive for them. Secondly, high dividends and return ratio as far as these companies are concerned. Most of the companies are debt-free, pedigree management, improving financials. So that is something that is benefiting them. Secondly, fourthly, domestic growth is faster than international. And this works for the Indian companies also, where US growth has been degrowing, Indian growth has been going significantly. Price control, note ban, and GST. This is the most important thing. That has reset the base lower for MNC companies or domestic market companies, and the growth that is coming in is extremely high for that. What is not working for the domestic pharma companies? First of all, competition, pricing pressure in the US. Most of them have shown a degrowth as far as their top line is concerned, both on the US and the overall market. Foreign regulator scrutiny, Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, and Wockhardt, some of them have not been able to come out of the US FDA net for years. Weakening financials with global uncertainty, that is working against the Indian pharma companies. no clarity on the future drug pipeline given the fact that there are so many generics that are coming in, and high R&D investment. As far as the MNCs are concerned, they don't have to do significant amount of R&D, but their Indian pharma companies' margins are getting significantly squeezed because of higher R&D costs. So that's why you're seeing, despite being expensive, money seems to be moving back into the MNC pharma stocks now.
Interesting analysis there, Darshan. Thank you so much for that. That's pharma for you. ICICI Securities, meanwhile, has filed a revised draft red herring prospectus with the Registrar of Companies just a week before the IPO hits the primary market. People in the know have told Bloomberg Quint that that ICICI's broking and merchant banking arm is looking to lower its own valuation quite substantially. Sajid is here to tell us why. Why? And what's the logic?
When they filed for the DRHP in December, the markets were almost at a height, and so at that point in time, the bankers who we spoke to, they said that the valuation of ICICI Securities will be close to 25,000 crores. Since then, a lot have happened in the markets, and the markets have corrected substantially, and that's why now they're coming at two-thirds the original valuation, which means the company is now getting valued between 16 to 18,000 crores as compared to 25,000 crores there, and that's a substantial fall in valuation for the company. That's also one of the reasons there is push to go through this thing, because ICICI wants, it's an offer for sale by ICICI, which basically means ICICI is looking to get nearly 44,000 crores in this quarter itself from sale of ICICI Securities share, which is offer for sale happening, and that IPO may happen as early as next week, and the entire process is expected to be completed by March 31st, so that the amount can be booked in the ICICI Bank's book. So that's one which is there. Because it's a large issue and they are raising more than their net worth, they would be placing nearly 75% of the book to institutional shareholders and 25% only to retail and HNIs. So again, it's an institutional heavy IPO which is going to come in. We understand that in next 1 or 2 days is when the ROC filing is going to happen, and once that happens, the road shows begin, and next week the book opens.
Next week the book opens. Sajid, thank you so much for that. That's ICICI Securities. We'll simulate a short break, but on the other side, politics. Bipoles in UP, the combined might of SP and BSP may just give them an edge in both Phulpur and Gorakhpur.
Bado, bado, bado mere sang.
कुछ इसी तरह बच्चों के साथ साथ बढ़ते हैं LIC के चिल्ड्रंस प्लान्स, जो दे आकर्षक भुगतान बच्चों की हर बढ़ती अवस्था में।
बढ़ो 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 मेरे संग।
Sorry, I'm late. क्या हुआ?
कुछ नहीं यार, just working on my expansion plan.
Funding का चक्कर.
It is so frustrating. I feel like banging my head against the wall.
No, don't bang your head. Cross the bridge instead.
Bridge?
हाँ, ये देख. ला.
अरे.
This bridge gets you in touch with interested investors. Funding happens, which means more outlets, more customers.
Interesting. And what exactly is this bridge?
A stock exchange created for your kind of company. Just list on it and help your business expand.
Really?
Yeah.
तो फिर लिस्ट कर लूं?
और क्या? शुभ काम में देर किस बात की? चल.
हाँ.
NSE Merge, साथ हमारा, सफलता आपकी. The SME Growth Platform from India's largest stock exchange.
On 26 November 1949, the Constitution of India was adopted, recognizing liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life, which cannot be separated from each other. The government of Karnataka has imbibed the ethos of the Constitution by developing programs and policies aimed at creating a socially, economically, and politically just society. Karnataka's flagship programs such as Maitri, Annabhagya, and Arivu have created an equal opportunity platform for all, irrespective of their gender, economic, or social status. Karnataka is committed to encourage education through various welfare initiatives, ensuring equal status for women and empowering minorities to uphold every individual's dignity. In the last 4 years, Karnataka has formed 462 new Gram Panchayats, which has taken the principles of democracy to the grassroots levels, and our Progressive Vision 2025 document engages public government participation to build a better state for all. Karnataka's collective vision to endorse fraternity, justice and equality has transformed into Karnataka's model of development, which is based on the tenets of the Constitution.
White shirts, कितने plain और simple. Fog scent, plain और simple white shirt को बना दे special और fashionable. Fog scent, new fashion wear for men.
You're back on Power Lunch, the headlines at this hour. Indian markets continue to drop amid weak global cues on worries of political uncertainty in the US. UP bypolls throw a surprise. The combined might of Samajwadi and BSP seems to be working. They lead in Phulpur and Gorakhpur. Renowned physicist Stephen Hawking dies at the age of 76. Quick check on how the markets are faring at this juncture. You are seeing weakness on the screen. It's becoming a pattern of 2 days of gains, while the market seems to be taking profits every time there's been steady gains. Today, you're seeing the Sensex and the Nifty trade nearly 0.5% in the 0.5% in the red, particularly led by bank stock, which once again have been taking it on the chin. State Bank of India, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, all of them are trading in the red today. But broadly, the indices across the board, even the mid-cap universe, seem to be in the mood for profit taking. Let's talk about the macro economy now. It's hard to overstate the importance of the rural economy in India, considering the contribution that agriculture has to growth and the sway the rural population holds on the country's politics and economics as well. Fortunately, rural economy has to be picking up. That's what the latest Bloomberg Economics Rural Tracker shows. Abhishek Gupta, our economist who's created this index, joins us from our studios in Hong Kong. Abhishek, thank you so much for joining us. First, walk us through what the rural output index is. What are the factors that it takes into account, both from the conventional, traditional parameters that we know and the unconventional parameters?
Thanks, Harsha. So this is a new index that I've created, as you rightly pointed out. We don't really have any indicator to track the rural economy, and the only indicator available to us is the agricultural GDP growth that comes with a lag of 2 months, and it is a quarterly series. So what I do to create this ticker is I look at 7 monthly data series and aggregate those into creating an index that can give us a sense of the rural economy that goes beyond just looking at agriculture. So the components that are included in this tracker include sort of components which are focused on the agricultural sector, such as the amount of rainfall, the agricultural trade balance, which is estimated by sort of looking at the detailed import and export data and aggregating the agri-commodities within that. And I also look at some non-agricultural components such as two-wheeler sales, real cash demand in the economy, and the real rural wage growth, and also the government's rural expenditure by its key ministries. One of the other components is tractor sales as well. So it's a combination of these agricultural and non-agricultural components which sort of merges the supply and demand side of the economy to create this comprehensive rural tracker.
Okay, hold the thought, Abhishek. Let me bring up that the tracker on the screen for the benefit of our audience. This is the Bloomberg Economics Rural Tracker, Rural Economy Tracker, the Rural Output Index. What it really is showing at this point in time, and as you can see, the blue circle there talks about the impact of demonetization. There was the drought impact that the big circle shows. After that, you're seeing a mild recovery which has been interrupted by demonetization, and then you see the pickup. Again, Abhishek, what are the factors at play here? And is there enough evidence to say that this revival is for real?
So if I look at the various components of this tracker, essentially there are two key factors at play over here. One is the rains, and as you just pointed out, after the back-to-back consecutive droughts in 2014 and 2015, we were starting to see some recovery in 2016 with a year of normal monsoons, but that got interrupted by demonetization. But once again, we were lucky enough to get another year of good rain in 2017, and with rapid remonetization happening, I think the rural economy is once again showing signs of revival. The outlook for rains in 2018 is also normal right now. The latest outlook put out by the Australian Weather Bureau suggests that we are in for another year of good rains. So essentially, that is one of the key factors which sort of gives us an outlook on the rural tracker. Another key component is the government's rural expenditure via its rural ministries. And we've seen there's a chart in the report that shows that ever since the new government took over in 2014, there was an increasing focus on rural expenditure. However, that also got dented after demonetization, since there was a dearth of cash due to the rural economy being largely cash-based informal economy. And once again, we are seeing early signs of revival in that as well. Also, the budget 2018 focused on rural expenditures. So going by that, we can also expect sort of the expenditure by the rural ministries to continue going into 2018. All the other factors essentially are some variant of these two components. Essentially, if there's good rains, then there'll be good agricultural production, good higher income in the rural economy, and all of that bodes well for the outlook.
Okay. My last question, and bring up the last chart on the story for you. This is sort of correlating tractor sales, two-wheeler sales, tractor sales in particular, as a sort of a proxy to what to the growth in the rural economy. Abhishek, again, if you link this back to rural wages and how tractor sales have performed, what does this indicate to you?
Harsha, real rural wages is one of the only components within the tracker which has actually turned down over the last few months. So at the time of demonetization, rural wages did not drop, and in fact they continued to increase. Maybe that was a result of higher demand in the agricultural sector due to the first year of good rains after 2 years of drought. But right now, what has happened is due to a sharp fall in inflation, sort of a sharp increase due to changes in inflation, we are seeing the real rural wages drop down. And so that remains to be seen how that plays going ahead.
Okay. Abhishek,
but tractor sales is something that bodes well for the economy.
Sure. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much indeed, Abhishek, for joining us with your views. That's the Bloomberg Economics Rural Output Index that talks about a minor revival in the overall rural economy, and the sentiment seems relatively positive. Let's stay with the macroeconomy for a while. WPI Wholesale Price Index rose at the slowest pace in the third straight month in February. WPI came in at 2.48% at its lowest levels in 6 months. What aided to the drop is cooling, the cool-off in both food and fuel prices, which gives the Reserve Bank of India to take a call on interest rates, perhaps gives them some more room to hold on to interest rates, at least at this stage. Let's talk politics now. And here is an interesting development that's taking place. Long-term foes who've combined their forces. Mulayam Singh Yadav, Samajwadi Party, and Mayawati's BSP seems to have cracked the formula to challenge the BJP and Yogi Adityanath in Uttar Pradesh. The SP-BSP combined is leading both the Lok Sabha by polls, that's in Phulpur and Gorakhpur. What's significant is that Gorakhpur happens to be the State Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath's sort of home base and bastion. Sanjay Pugalia, editorial director at Quintillion Media, and someone who's tracked politics for a very long time, now joins us. Sanjay, thank you so much indeed for joining us. This is a significant development. The message that perhaps this, I don't want to preempt the result, but at this stage, it looks like a clear lead. What do you take out of this?
Look, if leads are going to be the final result, which means Gorakhpur, Phulpur and Araria, BJP is losing. This is not just a bad news. This is very, very bad news. And we will have to actually come with an appropriate adjective. It could be a shocker, it could be an earthquake, because losing Gorakhpur is unbelievable. This was your sanctum sanctorum of the kind of politics BJP used to push. And Yogi Adityanath, exactly at 1 year anniversary when he is going to celebrate, coming such a setback in Gorakhpur is unbelievable, mind-boggling. I think there is a serious warning from the voter that do not take us for granted. We are not only just disappointed, maybe we are angry.
How do you think the BJP is going to take this, Sanjay ji? Because this is, would they see the, because materially this does not affect numbers. What would be the real politic behind this?
या हर्षा, चूंकि एक साल में बहुत ज़बरदस्त विक्ट्री हुई थी बीजेपी की, 52% का वोट शेयर था गोरखपुर में, वहाँ इतना वोट शेयर लूज़ करना बीजेपी के लिए सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट नॉर्थ इंडियन स्टेट में यूपी एक है, बड़ा मुश्किल होगा। दूसरी बात यह है कि 70 to 75% बाई इलेक्शंस इनकम्बेंट जीतता है। पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस इंडिया में ज़्यादातर बाई इलेक्शन रूलिंग पार्टी जीतती है। इधर जितने बाई इलेक्शन हो रहे हैं, राजस्थान हमने देखा, उसके पहले गुजरात असेंबली एक अलग स्टोरी है, उसके बाद हम यूपी में देख रहे हैं कि बाई इलेक्शन में बीजेपी लगातार ज़्यादातर सीटें हार रही हैं। प्लस लालू यादव को निकाल दिया गया आपके अलायंस से बिहार में, वहाँ पर आपने एक नया अलायंस बनाया नीतीश कुमार की पार्टी के साथ, और वहाँ पर भी एक एम्फैटिक मैसेज आपके खिलाफ अगर आ रहा है जब हम बात कर रहे हैं और वही रिजल्ट मेंटेन होता है, तो बीजेपी इज नॉट गोइंग टू टेक इट लाइटली. If you allow me to say so, I can say that the lion will be grievously, seriously injured, and he will, an injured lion, you know what he does, he goes for desperate measures. So will you now choose the path of polarization because that is your belief, or you get the message that liberal Indians are warning you, India is going to take liberal turn or conservative turn? That is the hope BJP has, that it will take conservative turn. In 2014 it took conservative turn. The reasons were absolutely different. Now I think rural India or urban India, especially North India, is giving a clear warning that do not take us for granted. We wanted governance, we are getting something else. We are not hearing more of jobs and development agenda. All the time we are hearing is about history, heritage, religion, past glory, etc. We are not happy about it. This is a severe warning. I do not think, look, BJP and especially Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah are obsessed, driven, paranoid about winning elections. They are going to decode it rightly. As far as public narrative is concerned, we will be told two things. That it was about arithmetic, that Mayawati and Akhilesh got together and that's why we got defeated. No, this election is about not arithmetic. This is about a clear mood and momentum because lakhs and lakhs of people have voted. It is much bigger election than Tripura and absolutely important election as Gujarat. This by-election is Gorakhpur and Phulpur. Many times in the past we have seen the by-elections set the agenda for the next election. Gorakhpur and Phulpur is that kind of warning. Now the effort will be to dismiss this as an isolated incident, and they will do some learning and they will come up with some new ideas and all of that. It is not going to work if they are going to be very strong about their belief, which is to pursue the kind of politics of polarization, division they are pursuing. It is the answer to that. They have to understand that New India wants to listen to some other narrative which they are not coming up with. Now there will be a pretension. Sure. One thing will be that Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah's election victory machine is intact. This is an isolated incident and they will try to focus on Yogi Adityanath. We do not know what is the actual equation between Yogi Adityanath and Delhi leadership. We do not know how RSS is going to view this whole election. But this is a serious development. This is earthquake, Harsha.
Okay. Sir, I have to ask you this question about the dinner diplomacy that happened yesterday at Sonia Gandhi's residence that sort of brought together various opposition party leaders under one umbrella. You know, if there is a victory today, and it's very likely to, Does this, in the sense, strengthen the coming together of the opposition parties?
Now there is a template, because once you smell the victory, you really try to come together and do something. Because you have asked about Congress party, look, Congress party has this luxury of being so-called principal opposition. Imagine today, if they had not contested these elections, they could have presented themselves as architect of this opposition unity and victory. They fought this election. They thought they should have the bargain power when they are going to deal with all opposition allies for 2019 election, but they lost deposits there. Congress is still not getting the big picture. Congress is still kind of stuck with its past analysis of the situation, and Congress cuts, to me, a sorry figure. That doesn't mean that the opposition unity will not happen. That doesn't mean that Congress will not play a primary role in the whole thing.
Always a pleasure, Sanjay. Thank you so much indeed for joining us with your views. Sanjay Pugale, editorial director, someone who's been tracking politics in this country for a very long time now. That's politics in India for you. But let's just focus and tell you what's happening in the United States. President Trump fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, setting in motion a shakeup of the administration's foreign policy team. What's interesting, though, is that Trump announced Tillerson's firing in a tweet shortly before 9 a.m. Washington time, saying that he would nominate CIA Director Mike Pompeo to fill the void. But it was several hours before Trump discussed his decision with Tillerson himself. Listen in to Trump's reason for this decision.
Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently. So we were not really thinking the same. I made the North Korea decision with consultation from many people, but I made that decision by myself.
What does the Mike Pompeo-led State Department mean for U.S. foreign relations? Bloomberg Joe Sobis has his report.
One of the things that may be significant is that Pompeo, if he does in fact have Trump's confidence and is in alignment with him thinking-wise, he'll be able to go into meetings and discuss things with his counterparts overseas with a little more authority. That Tillerson never really had Trump's ear. They were not on the same wavelength. So that made it difficult for him to engage in any sort of negotiations or discussions because his counterparts would figure that Trump could change his mind at any moment. Pompeo having a closer background with Trump, being more in line with him on a number of issues, may be able to bring that back into the State Department that it was lacking before.
The outgoing Secretary of State Rex Tillerson addressed the media late last night. He said he will ensure a smooth transition. He also highlighted the improvements in relationships with North Korea and its South Asian policy as a major achievement in his tenure.
My commission as Secretary of State will terminate at midnight, March the 31st. Between now and then, I will address a few administrative matters related to my departure and work towards a smooth and orderly transition for Secretary of State designate Mike Pompeo. First, working with allies, we exceeded the expectations of almost everyone with the DPRK maximum pressure campaign. With the announcement on my very first trip as Secretary of State to the region that the era of strategic patience was over, and we commenced the steps to dramatically increase not just the scope, but the effectiveness of the sanctions. The department undertook a global campaign to bring partners and allies on board in every country around the world.
Okay, that's Rex Tillerson's, the outgoing Secretary of State. Meanwhile, another development in the United States, CNBC personality Larry Kudlow has emerged as President Donald Trump's favorite to replace the outgoing director of the White House Economic Council, Gary Cohn. Larry Kudlow is already one of the informal advisors to President Trump and also served in former President Ronald Reagan's administration. Before we wrap up this edition of Power Lunch, we pay our respects to one of the greatest scientists of our generation, Stephen Hawking, who passed away today. The 76-year-old Nobel laureate who reshaped the way we understand cosmology died at his home in Cambridge.
बढ़ते समय